In this video, I'm going to be taking the line work that was created in the last video, and I'm going to turn that into an actual panel. I'll be using the Auto Place Panel by Text command. Once I set that up, I'm going to show how we can make some edits to the panel. We can modify the extraction ratio, subdivide the panel with pinpoints, take care of precedence, and connect some line plans. So back in the drawing, we have all of the line work that we need ready to create the panels. If I take a look at the underground pull-down menu, the command I'm going to be using is Auto Place Panel by Text. Now there are 3 other commands that will make panels as well. I tend to stick with the Auto Place Panel by Text command. I find that's just the fastest as far as generic layout, setup and edits, things like that. Just quick note on these other commands though. The Place Panel command will generate the same thing, but you would have to create the panels one at a time. Pick and Place Panel is essentially an extension of the Place Panel command, with the difference being that as you place the panel, the timing of the mine is actually calculated as you create the panels. So it's a slower process, but can give you more information as you build the mine. The Auto Panel Layout command is equally as quick as Auto Place Panel by Text, maybe even a little bit quicker. And that has a very different setup as far as the line work that's generated. Not going to be diving into that now, but you can explore that command if you want to test an alternative method. But for now, I'm just going to start my Auto Place Panel by Text command. And I'm going to get a few prompts in the command line. It's first going to ask me if I want to assign a 0 retreat extraction. So if I'm only going to mine on the advance, I will say yes to this. The advanced difficulty, so this will affect the mining rate in these panels. A value of 1 means normal mining rate, but you can speed these up, slow these down, panel by panel if you want to. The entry width, I'm using standard 20-foot entries here. I'll talk more on how this value could come into play later on. And now we're prompted to select our objects. I'm just going to do a window over all my panels, and notice that even though I selected the boundary in this no-go area, it only selected the perimeters themselves. So it's looking for closed polylines on the perim layer, and when I press enter, it's going to find the panel names inside of those perimeters, and if everything works as expected, it'll create these center lines. And if I zoom in on one of these center lines, you'll see it's also got the panel name shown as a small piece of yellow text on the mine PLTX layer. So seeing these center lines in the text, that just lets me know that that panel was converted. If you don't see these center lines or that text appear, the most common problem I see with that is not having something on the right layer. So for example, if the perimeters aren't on the perim layer, or if the panel name isn't on the panel NM layer, both of those things could prevent the panels from being generated. The next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a timing project manager file. We're not really going to be doing much with this file right off the bat, but when you get into editing the panels, the program has to have this file defined. So if I actually tried to edit a panel right now, I would get prompted for this file, but just to show how we can define that file, I'm going to go to the underground pull-down menu, Timing Project Manager, and I'm only going to have to create this file once. Any other commands that need it, after I define the file, it'll know exactly where to look. I'm going to put this in my main project folder, and we usually only have one of these files, so I'm just going to call it what it is, which is Timing Project Manager. Make sure this is a new file. Going to open. And there's a lot of things that we can define in here, such as the equipment, the calendar, start date. I actually don't have to create or don't have to populate this file just yet, so I'm just going to exit out of here and we'll come back to this later. So with that file in place, I can now edit my panels and see what's in them. So for that step, I'm going to go to my underground pull-down menu. I'm going to select Edit Panel. And I'll just pick our first panel in the list here. And so we can see a lot of information about this panel. So I can see the panel name, I can see the easting, the northing, azimuth for the direction of the panel advance. There's just a lot of information in here. It's just a way to verify that the panel was created and this is the information that's associated with it. I can always come in here and make changes to it. So if I wanted to rename the panel, I could do that. If I wanted to change up the extraction ratio, if I wanted to account for retreat extraction, a lot of things I can do in here. I'll be coming back to this one later, but I just want to show that that's a quick way to inspect the panel. So a little bit more about the panels themselves. So all of the data for the panel is really tied to this center line. So these center lines are going to be really important. We don't want to accidentally delete these, but if we do by mistake, all the panel information will also be stored in that timing project manager file. So if you accidentally delete one of these panels, do an edit panel command, you might see something in the command line saying that a panel is going to be restored. But just know that the line work and the timing project manager file are linked. Now with that, I can make some edits to the panels even after they've been tagged. So for example, if I didn't want these submains to extend out past these last production panels and I just wanted to shorten them up, what I can do here is if I move the perimeter back a little bit and I move that white center line to be a little bit shorter, and I edit the panel. This time, instead of pulling from the pull down menu, I'm just going to enter the command name, and I select on that panel. You will see nothing much really changes on here, but after I say OK, it's going to just check to make sure that the panel is still good, but it will accept that change. So any quick little edits I want to do like that, or if I even wanted to move the panel, I can absolutely do that. Just one note when you're moving a panel, it is recommended that you move everything associated with the panel. So the panel NM text doesn't really have to be carried around anymore, but just for the sake of keeping those things organized, it's good to have those. So if I did want to move this panel, I can just select everything associated with it, start my move command, and I'm just going to do a slight change here. I'll just move it down a little bit. And when I do the edit panel command and I pick on it, again, it's just going to check to make sure everything's good. It will tell me that the any of the panels that were updated, it'll just recognize those, but everything should be fine there. So if I move this back, again, just make sure you select the whole panel, and it's good to go. An additional step I'm going to need to do when using the auto place panel by text command. After you create the panels, you're going to need to basically recalculate the extraction so that the program knows to use this extraction text on the extraction ratio. So just to verify that, if I edit the panel, and let's take a look at this panel here, you can see right now it has an extraction ratio of 1 because when the panels were created, there were no pillars actually found inside the perimeter. If the pillars were drawn, this extraction ratio would have been calculated automatically. But just to refresh it, we're going to close out of that. We're going to go to our underground pull down menu and we're going to find Recalculate Extraction. So here we can just do a window on all the panels, press enter. I will have the option if I want to offset the perimeter. Most of the time I don't. I want to keep the original perimeter. And it will ask if I want to do any retreat recovery here. I'm going to set that to 0, so we're just doing advanced mining, but if you entered in a retreat recovery, it would apply that to the panel as well. Okay, and now it has updated the panels and it'll give you a little readout of the panels that were changed. But again, you can always go back to edit panel pick on any one of those, and that should now have updated the extraction ratio. So anytime you make a change to that text, it's good practice to just immediately rerun that Recalculate Extraction command. Now I do want to talk a little bit more about the retreat recovery. So if I recalculate the extraction again, and I'm just going to do it on this one panel here. Same prompt for the polyline offset, I'll leave that the same. The retreat recovery, so what this is actually asking for, it's asking me what percentage of the pillars am I going to recover. So if I leave this at a 1, it tells me I'm pulling absolutely all of the material out of the pillars. So I'm going to let this process, and then we'll change it up again, see how it changes. So here you can see that the normal extraction rate, this normal extraction ratio is 57.33, and the retreat extraction is the complement of that. So main extraction plus the retreat extraction gives me 100% extraction, even though I entered a 1 for the retreat recovery. So anytime you see this, just remember that's what percentage of the pillars. I'm going to do that command one more time. Select the same panel. And this time I'm just going to say if I'm only going to recover 80% of the pillar, that'll tell me, okay, the retreat extraction for the whole panel is now 34%. So I'm leaving some amount of coal in the panel. Now with that, I can always use my edit panel command, select it, and I'll see that value's entered there as well. So another option would be to just edit the panel and manually enter in the retreat extraction. Now there is an option to actually use a different perimeter for the retreat area. So for example, if I had a set of rooms on the side that I was only going to mine on the retreat, I could draw an extra perimeter and use this option here to prompt for the retreat options. If I used that, the program would ask me to select a retreat perimeter, and it would use that as the basis for the retreat area. I'm not going to get into all that, but I just want to show there are plenty of options here when it comes to the retreat. And for the sake of consistency, I'm going to put this panel back to 0 retreat extraction. So these panels are now defined, and we could actually start jumping into the timing, but there's a few other things I want to talk about as far as ways that we can edit the panel. So a rule that we get into with the calculation of the timing is that when a piece of equipment begins mining a panel, it has to mine it to completion before it can do something else. So for example, if I look at this main panel running from east to west, if I have a continuous miner working on this panel, but I don't want it to actually mine the entirety of the main, then back up, branch off, and get something else, I would need to subdivide the main panel so that I could basically mine up to this point, tell the miner to deviate off this panel, and go down to this production panel. So in order to subdivide a panel like that, there's two options. I could actually break this long mains panel up into its own smaller panels, but a much easier way to do that is to use what we call a pinpoint. If I go to the underground pull-down menu, I'll see a command here for add pinpoint. And if I pick anywhere on that center line, the command line will ask me if I want to pick a location or if I want to enter a distance from the start of the panel, or if I want to change the display size of the pinpoints. So what I'm going to do for this first, I'm just going to pick a pinpoint location, and I'm going to put it somewhere after the edge of this first production panel. So I'll put it right about there, and I can see that just draws a symbol for me. I'm going to put a couple more on there, so I'll pick the center line again, pick, and let's put another one right here, place one more, Put it right about there. So now that panel has been subdivided into 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. Now, if I edit the panel, I'm not actually going to see anything differ. It still refers to the whole panel as main 2. But when it comes to the timing, it's going to break this up into 4 sections. Now, another way that we can see those panels broken up is when we use precedence rules. So this is another concept that really comes in handy with the timing. So let's suppose that I have a continuous miner working on this main panel, and I have a second unit that's going to work on these production panels. Obviously, I can't start mining the production panel until my main panel has mined at least up to this point. So what I'm going to do is add a precedence rule that prevents this panel from starting until I've gotten at least up to this location. Now, there are a couple ways that I can define precedence rules. The first one is fairly slow, but very easy to work with. So I'm going to start with this edit panel command. I'm going to select this production panel. So this is the one that I want to assign the precedence rule to. So I can see this is just South 1, and there are currently no precedence rules. I'm going to add a new one on the advance. And the ways I can do that, if I click edit, it'll pull up a list of all the existing panel names. But if you've got a lot of panels, that can be a lot to sift through. So I tend to prefer this screen pick option. So what I can do here is just click inside the panel that needs to be mined before this production panel. So I'm going to click inside this main panel, and notice when I do it, I'm going to click on this side of that pinpoint. Once I click, it tells me that it added the panel main 2 beginning through the first pinpoint to the precedence rule. So here, if I just press enter, it adds that panel to the list. And now when it comes to the timing, I don't have to worry about manually adjusting the start dates or anything. I can just say, let this panel go when it's available, and that precedence rule will take care of that timing aspect for me. Now, just to show the other names of this panel that's been subdivided, I'm going to click on this edit list, and I can see it's referring to 4 sections. So again, this is main 2. The B stands for beginning up to the first pinpoint. This would be pinpoint 1 to pinpoint 2, 2 to 3, and pinpoint 3 to the end. So that's just the way the program will present those panels to us whenever it comes to the timing. Now, there is another method of assigning precedence. It's a little bit quicker if you're doing mass assignments of precedence rules, and it's also a lot easier to add it to the panels themselves. So for this command, I'm going to create a new layer, and the name of this layer needs to be precedence. It's not case sensitive, but I always like to treat it as if it is. So I'll turn that on. I'll make that my current layer, and just to give it a different color, I'm going to go with a cyan color here. And now my next step is going to be to draw the precedence lines themselves. These are just standard 2D polylines, and I'm going to draw them in the direction that the precedence needs to be applied. So if this panel cannot be mined until this section of this panel's been mined, I'm going to pick a point going from the preceding panel to my target. Now, these don't have to snap onto those center lines. I just like to draw them there. Makes it look a little bit cleaner. And I can do the exact same thing for these production panels. And there's nothing really special about them, so I could just copy these precedence lines. Just kind of throwing them in there. And everything's the way I need it. Do one more going from here to there. And now I'm going to go to my underground pull-down menu, panel precedence by polylines. I'll select all of the panels, then I'll select all the precedence lines. It'll ask me if I want to assign this to the retreat or the advance. I'm not dealing with retreat panels, so I'll just assign this to the advance. And now I can go check that. If I go to my underground pull down, edit panel, I'll take a look at one of these production panels. And I can see there that this North 1 East number 4 cannot be mined until submain 1 is completely mined out. And if I take a look at submain number 2, I'll see that this one can't be mined until we get up to at least the 3rd pinpoint in this main 2 panel. So just by using these precedence polylines, you can draw those in, copy them very quickly. It's very easy to assign your precedence. The next thing I want to do here is show how we can connect mine plans and how we can remove panels. So I mentioned earlier that it's not good practice to just delete the panel center lines. If we do want to officially remove a panel from the plan, we can do that through the underground pull down menu, and I'll see remove panel. So here I can select, let's say I want to get rid of those 3 panels, just highlight them, press enter, and that removes the center lines. It'll leave the perimeters in place, it'll leave the panel name and the extraction ratios. Those are all good to go still. So that's the best way to remove the panels. Now if I need to add some additional panels back into the plan, so let's say I didn't originally draw these, I created the rest of the panels with the auto place panel by text command, and then later on I realize I've got space for 3 more panels here. So I can create these panels in the same way that I did before, auto place panel by text. I get the same prompts, and I'm told to select my objects. Now when you're adding in additional panels, I've got to be careful not to reselect any of the panels that I already made. If I do that, it's going to duplicate the panels. It can just get a little confusing when you've got 2 panels on top of each other. So I'll be cautious about selecting them. Adds the panels back in, no problem. Now one additional step that I need to do here, because I made these 3 panels separately from the others, I need to make sure that the program understands that these panels are actually connected to the others. So every time you use the auto place panel by text command, it creates a new mine plan, really a new group. So if I were to try timing out the panels and I selected one of these 3, it would only show me this group of 3 panels. It wouldn't see any of the others. So in order to make sure that these panels are connected, the best way to do it is just get your panels laid out and create them all as a single group. But if you make some after the fact, just like I did, we will just go to the underground pull down, connect mine plans, select part of the mine plan to be connected. So I can really do these in any order, but I'll pick on that panel and then select a part of the mine plan to connect to. So I'll just go pick one of the panels from another group, and that's it. So now if I go and try to time out those panels, I would see that these 3 panels here are connected with the others. So I could time them all as a single plan. So just going back to our flow chart, in this video we talked about how to create the panels using auto place panel by text, and then I showed various commands for editing the panel. In the next video I'm going to be talking more about the timing project manager, so all the details needed for the mine timing, equipment rates, working calendar, things like that.